All right, guys, so here's the second video to help you guys out. I'm going to go over a handful of these of what I saw students struggle with the most, okay? So it says, let's go and just start with the first one. So it says, Becky rides the LEPT Go, whatever that is, and her time and distance are recorded on the table values below. Does the data represent a linear function? It's going to ask over and over and over on your test, what is a linear function? So it says use the table to justify. So for something to be linear, what does it mean? It needs to have a constant rate of change, or CROC as you guys tell me. Constant rate of change. Now people always get confused. They don't quite understand what the constant rate of change is. It's the change in y over the change in x. So looking at here, you need to look at the blue part of what's changing. Well, this goes up by 5. This goes up by 5, 5, 5. Now let's look at our x's. These each go up by 1. So your fraction would be 5 over 1 on all of them, so that would be 5. So you would write, yes, this is linear because it has a constant rate of change. Okay? Now let's go jump to number 2. You're going to be given a graph. Write this down. You're going to be given a graph. You're going to be given a table. You're going to be given points. And you need to tell me if it's linear, if it's a function, or if it's quadratic, so on and so forth. So really quickly, looking at these, you can tell by looking at a graph to see if it passes the vertical line test. So when I draw these lines, this hits my graph each and every time, one time. So this is linear. All right, now remember, whenever you're given this and you're kind of struggling, remember the definition of a function is every input has one output. So looking at this, I have Kaya. Kaya has zebra and tiger. Well, anytime I pick on Kaya, well, I know what the answer is, and it's no. It could be a zebra, it could be tiger. So because of this one input, it has two output. This is not a function. All right. The next one, period 3, I had a big question with this. It says, using this table, determine if it's a linear or a quadratic. Now, two things. Quadratics are the ones that make the parabolas. These are the ones that look like y equals 2x squared. Linear is y equals mx plus b. These are the ones that have a constant rate of change. So by looking at this, it's hard to determine at number 3 if it has a constant rate of change. So let's go ahead and take it step by step. So right here, the change in y, I'm going to see if it has a change in y over the change in x. So from -2 to 1, I went up 3. From 1 to 2.5, I went up 1.5. And from 2.5 to 3, I went up 1. Now, just by looking at this, students say, hey, look, this does not have a constant rate of change, therefore I'm done. No, you still need to look at your x values. So the change from -6 to 0 is 6. The change from 0 to 3 is 3. The change from 3 to 5 is 5. So now remember, you need to put these over each other. If I have 3 over 6, which is the change in y, over the change in x, I would get 3 over 6, which is 1/2. Then if I looked at this, 1.5 over 3, that also reduces to 1/2. And finally, if I have 1 over 2, if I have 1 over 2, that is just 1/2. So this actually does have a constant rate of change. Since it has a constant rate of change, it is linear. And the reason why would be because it has a constant rate of change. Now equation. Now we already figured out my slope. Remember, it's y equals mx plus b. And I already figured out my slope, which is 1/2, which means now I just need to find my b value. So looking at this table, I'm going to erase all this stuff. Does it show me what my y-intercept is? And it does. It's right here. So my y-intercept is when x is 0, my y is 1. So that means my b value is 1. So my equation is y equals 1/2 x plus 1. All right, now looking at this one, let's see if this has a constant rate of change. This is -3. This is then -1. This is 1. This is 3. Now looking at this, these just all go up by 1. So if I have -3 over 1, -1 over 1, +1 over 1, and 3 over 1, you can see that these do not have a constant rate of change, so it is not linear. So I want to focus on these, and let's see if we can discover what it is. I have 0 and 0, which is 0, 1 and 1, which is 1, 2 and 2, which is, 2 and 4. Now I want you to notice, if you take the number and multiply it by itself, you're going to get the answer. -2 times -2 is 4, -1 times -1 is 1, 0 times 0 is 0, 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, which means 3 times 3 is 9, and -3 times -3 is 9. I want you to notice how we have symmetry with 9 and 9, 4 and 4, 1 and 1, and 0. So this relationship is quadratic, and it's because it has symmetry, which means the numbers repeat, and no constant rate of change. So then the equation of this one would be y equals x squared, because it's just the number multiplied by itself. All right, on your test, you will need to make sure you understand how to read a story and tell me what it means. So it says, Niall bikes home along a straight road from his friend's house, a distance of 8 miles on the graph of his journey. I want you to be able to tell me what each one of these points represents on his journey. So I will leave you that. And on the parts that aren't moving, like A, C, E, G, and I, tell me the distance of what he is from home. So A, you would say, these actually should be shifted over one. At 0 minutes, he's 8 miles away from home. So that means at C, he would be, this is here, this is here, this is here. At C, that would be 30 minutes after he started. He's 6 miles away from home. So hopefully that helps, because you're going to need to be able to look at a graph and tell a story. You're also going to be able to read a sentence and graph it, so make sure you know how to do that. Don't forget to label your x and y axes. Now, on your graph, you're going to have to tell me, is it a function or not? So remember, the definition of a function, it's for every input, which is x values. You have one output, corresponding output, which is your y's. So looking at this is your x-axis. If you plugged in 1, you would get 2 answers, +1 and -1. So when I plugged in 1, did I get only one answer? No, it's not a function, because we had 2 outputs for 1 input. All right, now let's look at this one. When I plug in 5, I get a 6. When I plug in 7, I get a 6. When I plug in 9, I get a 10. When I plug in 11, I get a 10. So yes, this is a function, because every input had one output. Now it might be a little confusing, because it's like, wait a second, I plug in 5 and 7 and I get a 6. That's okay. What's not okay is if you plugged in 5 and you got a 6, and you plugged in 5 and you got a 7. That's not okay. But it is okay if you plug in 2 separate answers. Oops. When you plug in 2 separate answers and you get a different answer. I don't know why this is here, so give me a second to get rid of it. All right, now same idea. When you're given points, we have a 0, a -4, a 5, and a -4 for my inputs. You want to see if your inputs repeat, and they do. I have a -4 and a -4. Now you want to see if your outputs repeat. They repeat, and that would be okay. It would be a function. But my output, sorry, I keep messing up. But my output right here is 3 and 7. Therefore, for the same input of -4, I had two different outputs, so this would be no. This is not a function. And the reason is because of these -4s give me two different outputs. Now, guys, it's really important. I think your test is going to try to trick you here. If this point was -4, 3, this would be a function. Even though the points repeat, it's the same exact point, so that's a function. All right, let's skip that one. I want to go over two others with you. This, guys, I already saw your test. This will definitely be on your test for number 11, so make sure you know how to do all these. If you have questions, ask the sub or ask myself. Number 9 and 10. So what it says find the range. I want you guys to remember that range is all possible, all possible. And when it's written like this, the function of x equals 1/2 x minus 1, basically saying y equals 1/2 x minus 1. And it says my domain is x values. They're -6, 8, and 20. So it wants you to come up with three separate equations with three separate answers. So what this is saying is the function of -6 is equal to 1/2 of -6 minus 1. And it wants you to solve this. I'll do this one really quickly in my head. If I were to solve this, I would get -4 as my answer. So that's the first part of my domain. And because it's the same value, they just put it in fancy brackets, but they're just saying these are the answers. So then your second equation is going to be the function of 8 is equal to 1/2 of 8 minus 1. And it wants you to write the third equation of the function of 20 equals 1/2 of 20 minus 1. It literally wants you to solve this equation three separate times and write your answers with three separate answers. One when you plug in -6, one when you plugged in 8, and one when you plugged in 20. Answer right here, this would be your domain. Now that would be your range, all your y values. Now the second one is it's going to give you the range. It's going to give you the y values, and it wants you to tell you what did you plug in. So for instance, I'm going to set up the three equations. I'm going to solve one of them for you. So this would look like -2 is equal to 1/2 of x minus 1. That's the first equation. The second equation would be 0 equals 1/2 of x minus 1. And your final equation would be 3 equals 1/2 of x minus 1. So you have three separate equations. You have your range plugged in each three ones, and I got these numbers from right here in the fancy brackets. Now I want you to solve the number that you plugged in, your domain. So this would be you'd add 1 on both sides. You get -1 equals 1/2 x. You're going to multiply both sides by 2 to get x is equal to -2. So that's your final answer for that one. Excuse me, I shouldn't say final answer. That is your domain for one of your answers. And now you need to solve it 2 more times to get the second 2 answers. All right, guys. So finish this. Remember, this is meant to be a review. It's meant to help you out. So if you get stuck, feel free to go back. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Talk to the people at your table. If you finish both videos, if you finish both handouts, you may start your homework, which is the review number 17 through 36. Next time I see you, we're going to have a test. Good luck.